This is Eoin Colfer in Dublin.
This is Andrew Donkin in London.
Welcome to episode 6 of Double Booked.
Double Booked is a podcast for people who love books, children's books, graphic novels, libraries, bookshops, secondhand bookshops, librarians, and secondhand librarians.
Andrew Donkin, my co-host, is the internationally well-known author of over 60 books and graphic novels for children and adults, and has sold several million in his lifetime. But I think more importantly than all that, Andrew, is you've had kind of a rough week, and we're very glad to have you here.
Thank you. I had a sad event in my household since we were last on air with episode 5, which is that my mum, my dear old mum, passed away, and she was always the biggest supporter of me being a writer, my writing, and the biggest fan all through the years. She listened to the first 3 or 4 double books over the summer and the early autumn and loved it, and loved hearing us sparring and messing about and stuff. And so with your permission, sir, I'd like to dedicate this episode 6 to her. Her name was Jean Florence Donkin, and she'll be much missed by her family and me.
Absolutely. Oh, sorry for that, Andrew, but I know she loved the podcast, and I think she'd especially love...
Annoyingly, she particularly always went on about how much she loved you in the podcast, which was...
Well, she knew you very well, so...
Heartbreaking, but there we go. I should introduce you as well. You are the genius behind the genius, by which I mean you are the genius that created boy prodigy genius Artemis Fowl. I've been surfing a wave of Artemis success for over the last 2 decades, taking you globally all over the place, winning numerous awards and being a top A-list celebrity children's author. So there you go. And I'm delighted to have you back for episode 6 of our brainchild, Double Booked.
Well, thank you very much. That was incredibly nice, and now I'm suspicious.
I think just the mum thing has just made me a nicer person just temporarily. It's not going to last. And
also, our viewers cannot see, but me and Seamus can see the entirety of Andrew's face, because for the first time in many years, you've man sculpted yourself. I don't think that's the right term, but you've taken off your beard. So usually
a little bit. It's just short. It's just very short as well.
It reminds me of the Careless Whisper videos. You know, remember George Michael had his double beard going on. It's
true, but everything reminds you of the Careless Whisper videos.
So. It is a great video. He's got those ropes. He's hanging on those ropes in the middle of the road, and he's like an urban Tarzan. Wonderful.
And we should say as well, because it's our kind of December special and kind of Christmas show, Seamus is here. Seamus, will you say hello? Will you say Merry Christmas to our listeners?
Merry Christmas, my handsome author friends. It's lovely to see you too. I have to say that Owen is looking also very man-sculpted, which is now
a new word, a new term.
Yeah, that's a new hashtag man-sculpture.
Seamus has changed his name on the screen to Shameless Whisper, which he's so fast. He's so quick at those. It's like...
I'll have the song ready for Christmas time, guys. But anyway, back over to the more important people here.
Back to the news desk. Owen, would you like to know what's on the show this month?
Well, I would love to see you kind of shuffle the papers, you know, the way the newscast.
There you go. All right.
And tell me what's on the show.
We've got loads and loads of special guests because it's our end of year. This is the end of season 1. We'll be back in January with season 2, but this is the end of season 1 of Double Booked. So we have got all of our guests back, which is Jonathan Stroud, Jenny Valentine, Cressida Cowell, and MJ Leonard, as well as this podcast special guest, illustrator extraordinaire PJ Lynch, and they are all popping in to give us a book recommendation. They're recommending a book. They've had their choice of any children's book that they like. I suspect, because a lot of them are good friends of ours, that I suspect a lot of them will name books probably written by you or me or both of us.
I think we'll see. I don't want to say definite, but it's...
You don't want to say definite, but at least some of them will, and that's enough. We'll start with...
It occurs to me that we should have probably asked them to do that when they were in here and recorded it.
Yes, but Seamus has been round to their houses, pestering them from their back gardens, holding a microphone through their living room doors when they've been having dinner. And apparently he has got 6 recommendations from them, so that will be brilliant. Myshelf and I is my choice this week, and I am going for what I think genuinely is a work of genius and an overlooked children's classic, which is a book called A Mouse and His Child by a fantastic writer called Russell Hoban, and I'm going to be telling you why I think that's overlooked and how brilliant it is. We've got a romantic mad science this week, which is a really tenuous link to science. There's not really any science in it, but it's a nice romantic Christmas story. We've got an author interview with PJ Lynch, the fantastic illustrator. He's also an author, and he was just a brilliant artist. And then we've got It Was Rubbish, but I Loved It. And what have you picked? That's your pick this podcast.
Well, I thought in keeping with the Yuletide season, I would pick a Christmassy thing. And I've gotten a few presents over the years, which I really wanted. It's kind of two sections. One of them is presents I really didn't want, and I thought they were rubbish, but they turned out to be amazing and actually shaped my career a little bit. And then two, which I thought would be amazing, but actually turned out to be rubbish. So I think it's one everybody can identify with. We've all got that present that we really didn't want.
Absolutely. Brilliant. And then we've got an Agony Owen, which is about taking time off at Christmas. And then that's it. I think that's a packed program, especially with 5 top special guests and our lovely Shelves and Seamus as well. So should we crack on with Me, Myshelf and I?
We should crack on with that because I really want to get quickly to the recommendations and see just how many of those people recommend us.
Well, they're friends, so it's going to be nearly all. It's going to be. We're going to start with Jonathan Stroud. Is not going to let us down. He's a really good friend.
So he's kind of worships us. It's embarrassing, really, but I'm sure he's going to.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Seamus, play the little tagline thing. I love that.
I wonder what they've picked this time. It's Me, Myshelf and I.
So this book, The Mouse and His Child, you have claimed that this is something of an overlooked masterpiece, Mr. Donkin. So could you please justify that claim?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a book that I worry wouldn't be published today because it's a children's book that's not really for children, and it's not really for adults, and it's certainly not for young adults. But at the same time, it's for absolutely everybody. The title is The Mouse and His Child. It was published by Russell Hoban in 1967, and it's a story of a clockwork mouse and his son and their wanderings. It begins in a toy shop at Christmas, and they're bought by somebody, and then there's a little accident that happens, and they're kind of callously discarded. They're not quite broken, but they're callously discarded, and they set off in search of a family. And this is a lovely line: a way of becoming self-winding. Because here's the thing: the boy and his father, their hands are linked. They're clockwork mice. Their hands are linked together, and they can only move or walk or have any kind of life when somebody winds them. So although they're conscious and animate the whole time, they want to find within the story a family, they want to find love, and they want to find a way of becoming self-winding, which all the way through is just a lovely metaphor. It's really a book about identity and finding yourself and finding your place in the world. And these two set out, having been callously dumped after day after Christmas, to find their place in the world. On the way, they suffer all sorts of hardships. They get involved in a war between rodents. They spend a time living on a rubbish dump. At one point, they get thrown into the bottom of a pond, and they overwinter at the bottom of the pond, conscious. And they also suffer slavery under an evil, villainous character called Manny the Rat. Now, Manny the Rat is one of the great villains of children's literature. He's incredibly well drawn. He is a rat who is running a kind of underground movement. He's obsessive, he's complex, he's unpredictable, he's very clever, but ultimately he has the flaws of villainy that let him down. Russell Hoban has such a rich imagination. There are talking beetles and talking frogs. There's all kinds of animals. He said that the story idea came to him one Christmas. He was at somebody's house, and under their Christmas tree, they had some of these wind-up toys. I had a wound-up mouse with its little kind of baby mouse walking along. And the person was saying, and I've got these down, Russell, from the loft for Christmas. And he thought, wow, okay, what kind of life is that for them? They're, for 50 weeks of the year, they're in a box packed away in the loft, and then they just live for the 2 weeks of the year that they're allowed to come down and be under the Christmas tree and be wound. And then the rest of the year, they're just in suspended animation, packed off there with no love, just kind of wondering what's happening. And so he concocted this amazing story where what if during that 2 week period when they're down, they get they get set free, in effect. They get thrown out of the back door, and they're found by a tramp who winds them up and sets them loose into the world. And instead of going back into their annual hibernation, having no kind of life, they set off in the world to find their own existence, their own identity, and their own place in the world. And I think that A Mouse and His Child is a brilliant story. It's fantastically written, and it's a brilliant story for anybody who sometimes wonders what their place is in the world and would like to find it. And with your permission, I would like to read a little excerpt now. I'm going to read the beginning of chapter 2, because a tiny bit into chapter 2, the mouse and his child meet Manny, and I just want to introduce you to Manny the Rat. So what's happened so far is that the mice have been bought from the toy shop by somebody with more money than sense. An accident happens at home and one of them gets dented, and then they've been callously cast out, and now they're just walking along. Chapter 2. The mouse father walked forward on the bridge, pushing the child backwards before him until his motor ran down and he could move no further. Trains rumbled and shrieked on the tracks below. Cars and trucks shook the bridge as they roared past and vanished in the distance, while father and son stood trembling. The afternoon wore on towards evening, and the broken glass of the roadside glittered in the last low sunlight of the day. The snowy fields glowed brightly and went dark. At the dump, the fires of burning rubbish smouldered red and smoky in the dusk. The bridge lights went on, and beyond their unearthly blue glare, the highway lamps spaced out over the twilight to the dark horizon. Far away, the clock on the town hall told the hours, and the mouse and his child waited in silence until they heard the faint strokes of midnight. "You see now where your crying has brought us," said the father. "I'm sorry, Papa," said the child. "I didn't mean to cry. I couldn't help it." The father looked thoughtfully into the night beyond the bridge, where the red tail lights diminished and the white tail lights continued approaching. The wind was rising, and in silences between the traffic, the girders of the bridge creaked with cold. "How strange it is to walk straight ahead," he said. "I walked backwards," said the child, "but I liked it better than dancing in a circle. What shall we do now?" "Who knows," said the father. "There seems to be a good deal more to the world than the Christmas tree and the attic and the dustbin. Anything at all might happen, I suppose." "But it won't," said a soft voice close by. "Not this evening, my lads." A large rat crept out of the shadows of the girders onto the light of the overhead lamps and stood suddenly on his hind legs before the mouse and his child. He wore a greasy scrap of silk tied with a dingy string in the manner of a dressing gown, and he smelled of darkness, of stale and mouldy things and garbage. He was there all at once, and with a look of tenure, as if he had been waiting always just beyond their field of vision, and once let in, would never go away. In the eerie blue glare, he peered at the father and son. His eyes, as passing headlights came and went, flashed black and red like two round, tiny mirrors. "Time to be moving along now," said the rat. He set them on their feet, wound up the father, and guided them across the bridge and up the road towards the dump. "Where are you taking us?" asked the father. "To a ball," said the rat. "To a jolly, jolly ball at the royal palace, where we shall all drink champagne and dance until dawn. How will that be?" He laughed softly. His voice, half pleasant, half repellent, was oddly mild and persuasive. "Are we really going to a palace?" asked the child. "I don't think so," said the father. He's teasing us." "Yes," said the rat. "I'm a dreadful tease."
That is a spooky rat.
It's a spooky rat. He is one of the most sinister characters in children's literature, and that's my recommendation. It's available as a Faber modern children's classic. It's available in the USA. It's available in Ireland. If you don't know the book already, A Mouse and His Child by Russell Hoban. Please go and read it. And if you like it, if you don't like it, write in with your views on it to doublebookpodcast@aol.com. And we'll read some out next time. But it's a fantastic book, Owen.
I don't think I think I read it, but not. Did you read it when you were young? I mean, how old were you?
I read it as a kind of teenager because it was recommended to me. So I didn't read it when I was young. And I think it's probably kind of 11 plus. You could read it to a youngster and they would get the kind of like, oh, it's a talking rat and a talking mouse. But you probably need to be kind of 11 plus teenager to kind of get the darkness. Because Manny, the reason that Manny is so menacing is that he isn't a mad villain who just wants to set off an atomic bomb and conquer the world. He is just really seductive and really creepy and really, really corrupting and really evil. He does get his comeuppance, and if you're thinking about reading it to your kids or buying it, No spoilers, but there is a happy ending. It's not terrible, but it is a fantastic journey to go on. And Russell Hoban, who's also known as the author of Turtle Diary, as one of his famous adult books, is a brilliant writer.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. That's to go to the. And it would be a great Christmas gift, actually. So if you're still looking out for a gift, that might be one to grab for your 10+ child, as opposed to your 10+ children. That's a different thing.
Yeah, that's you wouldn't have any money left for books, would you? You had 10+ children, crikey. Oh, right.
Listen, is it time to hear a recommendation?
I think it is, and I think we'll do them in order they appeared in the episodes. Our lovely guests, and thank them all so much for being part of Double Book this year. So this is the recommendation from our dear friend Jonathan Stroud. I don't know what he's going to go for, because it could be 25 Cities, it could be the Fowl Twins, or I suspect Jonathan, because he's lovely. He's so lovely and he's so posh. When he rings up, I get my kids to answer the phone and pretend to be my butler. That's how posh he is. He's absolutely lovely, and we're gonna have to see what he recommends. It may well be illegal. Seamus, play Jonathan.
Hi, this is Jonathan Stroud with my recommendation. It is Wild Lord by Philip Womack. Which is a fantastic fantasy. A story of Tom, a young orphan lad who lives at a boarding school. His parents are dead. He has nowhere to go. The holidays begin. He is still at school. A mysterious boy that he's never met before appears while the school bells are ringing and gives him a letter from an uncle he never knew he had, inviting him to come to his house and live with him. He looks up. The boy has gone. The bells continue to chime. All this happened between the 10th and the 11th stroke of the bell. He goes to Suffolk. He goes to this house. He meets his Uncle Jack and two mysterious servants this guy has. As he arrives at the house, he is shot at with arrows, and he soon discovers there are supernatural beings out in the woods besieging the house. His uncle, a magician, wants him to help defend the property. But of course, there's more to this than meets the eye. I loved it. It's about a lonely child. It's got a tremendous sense of place, sense of time, the power of nature, a brilliant depiction of magic, and a fantastic cast of characters treated with great compassion. It's a fantasy for everybody who loves great English literature.
Well, that's a shocker. I mean, I'm not saying Philip Womack's not great, but he is not us. I feel I know what happened there. I feel Jonathan didn't understand the rules, and he thought he couldn't do us.
Do you think he thinks that Philip Womack is a pseudonym of yours?
That's probably what it is. I don't know. I can't. I think we'll have to. Maybe we can contact Jonathan and ask him. What's going on there. He might like to do a do-over. I think we could arrange that. But anyway, there's 4 more to go.
Yeah, so we'll be in the reference. Shall we move on? Let's have Mad Science.
I think that would distract us from that disturbing recommendation. Mad Science, please. Science me.
Hello, you're true to the weird science department. Have you tried turning it on and off again?
Okay, well, this is a very tenuous story. There's almost no science to this, apart from there's a little gap in time. But this is nice. This is from Ripley's Believe It or Not, the little Christmas edition, because it's a special Christmassy show. This is a heartwarming story. In 1971, Adrienne Pierce of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, was given a Christmas gift by his then girlfriend, who immediately broke up with him, which is, for a start, we have to say bad timing. Why would you give a gift to someone if you're going to break up with them? But he was given, and he held on to the unwrapped present for 50 years. So he kept it. He couldn't bear to get rid of it, but he didn't unwrap it until December the 6th, 2018, when he and his girlfriend came together to unwrap it for charity. Any guesses as to what the gift was? What was in that little package?
Pregnancy test.
It was a book about love. There you go. Finally unwrapped 50 years after it was given and kept safely for 5 decades by Adrienne Pierce. So there you go. I think that's a nice...
I wonder why he couldn't... he was just too heartbroken to open the present. And then maybe after a few years, he just put it to one side. And it was a book about love. And they came together... Are they famous? Is one of them famous, or was this? I wonder why
they're famous. They're famous to Double Book listeners as the book that was kept for a long time couple. But that's it. They're not otherwise famous. They're not like Cher or something.
I think it's very romantic in a way. You know that they he didn't open the book, and then but he was obviously thinking about her all that time, and maybe every year he just picked up the package and thought, shall I? And then said, no, I shan't.
And he kept it safe. He knew where it was. All right. Now, Jonathan has obviously disappointed us, but next up is Jenny Valentine and her book recommendation.
Oh, wow.
I love Jenny. Jenny loves us, so it's only a question of what book she's picked. So, Seamus, you take this. Please play Jenny's book recommendation from the great Jenny Valentine. Let's have it.
I've decided to plug a book that I haven't finished yet. It's quite original, isn't it? But it's so good. It's called Upper World by Femi Fadugba. It's so good. It's a really interesting combination of things. It's breathtakingly clever and exciting, but also and deeply rooted in that kind of imaginative strand of science that I find bewildering and fascinating in equal measure. And it's got diagrams in the back with maths and kind of, fairly understandable explanations for these completely mind-boggling concepts, and I'm completely in love with it. And I haven't finished it yet, but I have total faith that even if I had finished it, I would still be recommending it as my book.
Upper World. That's definitely not us. That's not us. I'm looking back through my catalogue now, and I've done a lot,
but even the DK readers I did years ago. No, it's not. That's not on them. That's not one of ours. That's not one of ours. Okay.
Have we sent Jenny her check for appearing on the show?
No,
maybe we should.
We haven't. No.
Okay, well, let's not do that.
We haven't sent this out. Okay. I love Jenny. I still love Jenny, but I love Jenny less than I did about 90 seconds ago. So I don't know.
About 3% less.
Okay.
Yeah, that is very. I don't want to say rude, but yes, I will say it's rude. You bring someone on a podcast, talk all about their brilliant books, and then we get Upper World just slapped in our face like a wet fish.
She was talking about her books, joy, but that's certainly not brought us joy. So I knew you'd like that. You see what I did there? Seamus is laughing. No,
nice.
No, you almost finished it for yourself.
It's like being in a Pixar movie doing a podcast with you. Everything is connected.
There you go. Let's get. You have bagged us a fantastic Irish guest. The biggest name in Irish illustration, I would say.
He's definitely. We're having a bit of a golden age in Irish illustration at the moment. But PJ, he's like, I don't want to call him the granddaddy because that makes it sound like he's had his day, because he's very much completely on top of his game.
He's only 27. We should just say for listeners that he's only 27,
but he never moisturized. He never moisturized, and that's what happened. So, but he's a new book out called "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," where he illustrated that famous poem, and it's just sumptuous stuff. And so PJ is going to come on, and we're going to have a chat about his career and maybe give some advice for young artists who are trying to get into illustration. So, Mr. PJ Lynch, or as the French call him, PJ. So
let's get him on.
Welcome to the part of the show we invite writers to. We really love them, and we know you love them too.
This podcast, we have an extra special guest, your friend Andrew and mine, and James's, and anyone who's a fan of illustration, the wonderful, iconic, can I say, PJ Lynch. PJ has worked as a children's illustrator and occasional author since 1984, which is, I think, that's that before you were born, Seamus? I'm not sure. But anyway, in that time, he's won every award going. The Mother Goose Award, the Christopher Medal 3 times. Like 2 wasn't enough. We had to go for that third.
And two Kate Greenway medals.
2 Kate Greenway medals. So I think he's on some kind of records wall everywhere. But the crowning jewel, I think, of his life was no doubt working alongside me, PJ. Would that be? we did win. We won, like the Dogo lost his spark. We did win a nice award.
We did.
And I realized then that every time I go to award shows, I don't win. So in future, I'm just not going to go. I'm the Jonah. So next time, Andrew, you're going on your own, and PJ, you went on your own, and that's why we won. But anyway, PJ has written many fantastic books, and his style of art, I don't know, what would you say, PJ?
Epic. I would say his style is epic. Because genuinely, when you look at it, there's so much detail. One thing that I love about your artwork that you do, you manage to fit in massive things in landscapes. So when you do a street or when you do a town, there's not just so much detail, but there's so much width and also so much depth as well. You really feel that you can walk into any of your paintings and any of your pages, and I love it. So can you tell us a little bit about when you get a text through, how do you break it down? How do you approach your process of beginning to take something like a picture book text and make it into the fantastic illustrations that you come up with?
Well, it's interesting that, Andrew, when you say something like there's big landscapes and you put this in, you put that in. I was just thinking the other day, I was trying to come up with a new story to write myself. And I was just thinking how easy it would be for me to say, and there was a huge room full of gold and jewels and all this kind of stuff. And that's one sentence. And you writers, it takes you guys 5 minutes to craft a sentence.
2 minutes, I'd say, Andrew.
2 minutes, 30 seconds. But for me to paint a huge room full of golden things all over the place, it's a week's work, 2 weeks' work. So that kind of stuff, that's important. If the author includes descriptions like that, I have to reflect that in the pictures, And I suppose it's my own fault for going for texts that have that epic quality about them. I love great fairy stories and legends and things like that, and a lot of them would have big vistas and dramatic scenes with lots and lots of characters. So it's my own fault. I make work for myself.
I think as well, when
you've said something there, PJ, that in over 15 years of working with our regular collaborator Giovanni Regano, who does graphic novels like Illegal, he hasn't worked that out yet. And when he hears this podcast, he's suddenly just going to realise that, in fact, he can just write his own stuff and it's a lot less work. So,
being the illustrator, Giovanni would be on twice the money that you guys are on.
What?
Is that right?
Is that? That's what we've told
that's
him.
it.
That is exactly
right,
what we've
PJ.
told
You're
him.
absolutely spot on there, PJ. So it's completely fine. Absolutely. Owen, what did you want to ask PJ? Let's move on quickly.
I had two questions, PJ. First of all, do you really have time to be making up stories? I mean, I thought you were quite busy on a secret project there. I didn't think you had time to. I thought we were under the gun a little bit, but let's ignore that for now. One of my favorite techniques of yours is perspective, in that you're always looking for a different perspective than people might imagine. For example, very high looking down on a city, something like that. It's really cinematic. But what I wanted to ask you, and this is, I suppose, the real question, because a lot of young people listen to our podcast, and when we go touring, and we've toured together, PJ, me and you, Andrew, we meet a lot of artists, like a lot, I would say more than writers, but then they stop. Like, there just seems to be this huge fall off in art for kids. I was lucky to have a dad who kind of encouraged art, but do parents ask you, how do I keep my kids interested in art?
Yeah, they do ask, and I would encourage them to keep drawing and use the new technology that, the phones are taking over so many people's lives, but you can use it as an artistic device. You can do Photoshop, you can do all sorts of special effects on the phone, and you can draw on phones and tablets and things. So rather than say to the parents, don't let them near iPhones or Galaxy phones, whatever, I would say use the creativity of the phone, because the kids are going to get into that stuff anyway. So just encourage their creativity whatever way you can. The ideal way is a sketchbook, and for the kid to just lose themselves and draw during any sort of... When I was a child, back in those old days, we had only 2 channels on the TV, and a lot of the time there was nothing on, so there was nothing to do. If it was a wet day, you couldn't go out. So I would find a piece of paper and just scribble on it and lose myself in it. And I would love it if kids these days could do the same thing, but there's so many distractions, it's terrible. But
what age were you when you realized, when you thought, okay, lots of people have said to me, oh, you're really good as a little kid, you're really good at art. When did it click? When you thought, actually, I can do this as a career?
Well, it clicked ridiculously early because my mum was always telling me I was really brilliant. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm brilliant. I got to keep at this. But what I didn't realize was that she was telling my brothers and my sister that they were all brilliant as well. But I was the only one who totally believed it. And I just kept going for that reason. So it's like if you get enough encouragement, it keeps you going, you know. So that was from, I don't know, age 4 or 5. I was drawing away like crazy. And I remember coming up to Christmas and always trying to draw Santa Claus. And when I did something a bit clever was to get the shine on his belt, you know?
Yeah.
And realizing that some kids would think, oh, I need some silver marker to make a shiny belt. And somebody must have shown me how to do a shiny belt by doing a black bit and then leaving it white and then another black bit. And it looks like a shine. And once you start learning those little tricks, you start getting better. And people start thinking, oh, he's the kid who draws. And that was always me. I was always the one who was drawing all the time.
And how did you turn that into a trip across the water to Brighton College of Art? How did that come about?
I suppose going through school, I was determined to go to art college. I wanted to be some sort of an artist, but I didn't know it was going to be illustration. And this was way back at the late 70s and the 80s. So Belfast, where I grew up, wasn't a great place to be. And I couldn't wait to get away, to be honest. And I got the chance to go to Brighton College of Art. And at that stage, I was just doing a sort of general design course. And I got to meet some really brilliant illustrators. The best known of them is Raymond Briggs. And he inspired a lot of the students there to go into children's books. So that's how I got into it.
Wow. And can you remember the first image you had published?
Yes. It was a friend of a friend who was doing a small business, and she was selling baby nappy stackers. And she was making them out of coat hangers and putting a little bit of material around them. And the idea was you put your nappy inside these things. And she was selling them, and she needed a drawing for the advert. So I think I may have got a $5 for that. So that was my first professional job.
The Nappy Stackers does sound like an excellent name for a fantasy series.
A horror series.
A horror series. That's and how many books have you done since then, Peach?
Since the Nappy Stackers, I've moved on. I've done about one a year, so I'm probably up about 28 or 29. I've missed a couple of years when I took on projects that were too big for 1 year. Yeah. So 27, 28. How many have you done?
Oh, God. I think I've done 44 or something, or 45. But some of mine are very, very short, as you know. So It doesn't take that long to write them. I wanted to ask about your murals. You haven't just done books. You're well known for your murals. So can you tell us a little bit about the difference between painting a massive mural and doing an illustration for a small book?
Yeah, the first murals I was commissioned to do were for a library in County Cavan, up in the north of Ireland, the northwest of Ireland. And it was the place where Jonathan Swift had been living when he wrote Gulliver's Travels, and not many people knew that.
Wow!
So they wanted to celebrate that fact with some paintings based on Gulliver's Travels, and they wanted the paintings to be 8 foot tall, 5 foot wide. So they had to be. You couldn't do watercolors that big, so it had to be in oils. And I hadn't used oils for maybe 20 years, so I had to rediscover the technique. And then you have to look at it in a completely different way rather than, it's quite a different way. Because I was about to say, Rod, people perceive paintings on walls in a different way than they do a book illustration. But really, I used the same technique, lots and lots of details so that people could sit and look at these paintings and get lost in them and find details that you don't see at first, But the main difference was to work in oils rather than watercolor.
If people want to get it, because obviously people will be listening to this and hopefully you'll be interested in what we're all saying. Especially you, how would they get a little glimpse into the world of PJ Lynch?
Well, I've got a website, which is pjlynchgallery.com. And you can, if you just look up PJ Lynch illustration, hundreds of illustrations will come up, and you'll get to see little videos that I did that showed my technique. So they'll come up on Facebook and Instagram as well.
And you've got a new picture book out at the moment about the night before Christmas. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
I do. This is it right here. Can you see that?
For those of you watching on audio, PJ is now holding up a book that you won't be able to see, but it is impeccably drawn and beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Go on. So tell us a little bit about the story and what have you done? How did you approach the illustrations for that? Again, epic.
Yeah, and it's been illustrated by so many different artists over the years.
When you say it, let's tell the listeners what is it?
What was The Night Before Christmas?
Okay.
By Clement Moore. And it's that very famous Christmas rhyme that begins with, "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse." So it's that one. And it has been illustrated. It's all about St. Nick coming to deliver the presents. It was written over 100 years ago, maybe 150 years ago, in America, and in large part, it has informed our idea of what Santa Claus looks like. So Clement Seymour deserves a lot of credit for it, if he wrote it, indeed, because there's some dispute over whether he wrote it or whether someone else wrote it, but he gets the credit.
Well, whoever wrote it, you definitely drew it. So would you mind giving us a little reading there, maybe first few minutes? I know.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, thank you. "'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads, and Mamma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave a lustre of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh, and it tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick. I knew in a moment he must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and he shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away all. That's all I'm doing.
It's fantastic. So iconic. Everybody would be nearly quoting that along. It's amazing how the penetration of that.
We all feel we know it, but you probably don't know.
You don't know the full version, just the beginning. Yeah. And I want to say for the people listening at home that PJ was reading from a book that was so new it crackled when he turned the pages. I don't want people to think that Eoin and I were eating crackers and biscuits during your reading there.
Yeah. Well, PJ, thanks very much for joining us today. I know you have a very busy schedule, and before we let you go, we would like you to make a recommendation of a book that we can put with all our other recommendations. And no pressure, just pick like anyone you want. It doesn't have to be anybody in particular, you know yourself. And we will put it out. And it would mean a lot to whoever book it is, because they'll probably get loads of sales.
Yeah.
So, again,
that would be great. We're going to let you go into the next studio with Seamus and record your recommendation, if that's all right. And in the meantime, we're going to say thank you very, very much for being our Christmas guest and telling us all about The Night Before Christmas and your fantastic, third time I'm going to use the word, epic illustrations.
Thank you very much.
PJ. Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas, mate. That was brilliant. Fantastic to have a voice on from Ireland. I love PJ's stuff. His artwork is so amazing. It's so every single one of his pictures feels like you can walk into it. We have been very lucky, Eoin, with the guests that we've been able snag for this, Jonathan and Jenny. And our next recommendation is from Cressida Cowell, who, as I said when she was on a couple of episodes ago, she's our laureate in England. She's my Captain America. She's our leader. Seamus visited her in a beautiful southwest London to storm in during a family dinner time and tape a book recommendation. Again, she's a good mate. Again, I don't know which of our books she's going to pick, but Seamus is ready with the tape. So actually, Seamus looks increasingly worried as he plays these. Anyway, Seamus, play the tape.
Okay, my recommendation is for slightly older readers than readers of my books, and maybe young teens. And it's the Track series by Jason Reynolds. It's a wonderful. There are 4 stories told by 4 different kids, and they're just completely gripping. Told from 4 different points of view, and I love how they weave together. I think it's really, really clever.
That is, it's disappointing, obviously, and even more so for you, because it's like a royal slap in the face for you. Like your own laureate has disrespected you on the internet.
Captain America.
So I can't imagine how sad you must be.
Captain America has just blanked us by not choosing one of ours. Bless Cresta. There we go. I don't know. It was rubbish, but I loved it, and it's your choice this week. Let's have the jingle.
It was rubbish, but I loved it.
It was rubbish, but I loved it. And this week we have a seasonal set of rubbish things, and they are Christmas presents. We've all gotten those Christmas presents that were rubbish, but we loved them, or we thought they were rubbish and they ended up being amazing. And I have 3 to speak about, and maybe you might have one to add in at the end, Andrew. And my first one was a chopper bike. Do you remember the chopper bikes?
Absolutely.
In the 70s, they were amazingly successful, and they were based on, and they were very, very cool, and they were based on the American chopper motorbikes. So the idea was that it had a long padded seat and high handlebars, and you just lean back and you just cycle around the estate and you looked amazingly cool. That's not the one I got. I did not get that one. I got what was called a chopper sprint. And someone thought, you know what we should do on these bikes that are built and weighted so that you have to lean back. That's the way they're built, because they have a small front wheel and a big back wheel. Why don't we stick racing handlebars on those? So instead of being able to lean back, you have to lean hunched over. And these bikes were not built for that. So at the slightest touch of the front brakes, you just went flying over the handlebars. It was like trying to ride a billy goat with those handlebars. And so while they looked amazing, my brother and I, we both got them on Christmas Day. And it was fantastic. It was the biggest present that we ever got in our lives. And they were a wonderful present, but we got injured several times. And my brother, Paul, I don't know why he decided he would try this. We were cycling around the green by our house, and he was coming around the bend, and he thought to himself, you know what you should do, Paul? You should try and let go of the handles and clap 3 times and then catch the handles again and see if that's possible. And as he found out, 2 claps was possible, 3 is difficult. So he clapped twice. He leaned back. The bike just went out from under him. He slid in under a car, which he was lucky was stopped. The bike was totaled, and he lost the front of his tooth.
Ouch.
So that was Christmas Day.
Ouch, that's not good. I too, as well as I have a vivid. I received a chopper, thankfully not the one with the racing handlebars, not the sprint, and for Christmas, and it was a purple one, and I have a vivid memory of waking up in my bedroom, and it was when I was still in the small bedroom at the front of the house at Wellesley Road, and the bike was in with a sack of presents from Santa, and the bike was in my bedroom, and I have no earthly knowledge of how let's say whoever came down the chimney and put it in my bedroom could have done that without waking me. Because if I tried to do that with my kids, they would be awake in a second. What are you doing, Dad? Why are you carrying that massive bike into my bedroom? But whoever it was, Santa Claus, had got it into the bedroom. There was a couple of bits of tinsel on it, and it was just amazing as well. And then, of course, I had to insist that a grown-up got up to carry it downstairs to the garden, so that as I couldn't ride it around my very small bedroom. But I really wanted that, and I because you said to me that you were going to. I looked up the cost of them because I wondered how much they were. It wasn't something that occurred to me, but they were £32 apparently in the UK. A chopper bike that Christmas was £32, which is the equivalent. £32 then is the equivalent to £300 today.
That is a big present.
I had no idea that they were that expensive. I mean, I knew they were a big present, like a main present. Yeah. But when I was thinking about it today, I was thinking kind of like, oh, that must be like 50 quid in today's money or something. But it wasn't. It was over £300 in today's money. And my parents were not well off. That would have been a big present. God bless them. But I remember waking up and there was a bike in my bedroom, which is just crazy.
And I don't think you appreciate at the time how much it costs parents and Santa Claus to get all these presents, and how hard it must have been. And the 2 chopper sprints, I mean, again, if they were 35, 70 quid for my parents back in the year 1978 or whatever, it's a big sacrifice for them to make. So,
and you would just think, I don't mind spending £70 for my 2 sons. I love them. I just hope that they don't write the bike off on the same day that they take it out for its first ride. That's what you'd be thinking as a parent or as Santa Claus.
Yeah. And then you turn. I can imagine my dad turning to my mother and say, "Well, it's happened, Noreen. It's just as we feared,
just as we foretold, as the Christmas fairy tales foretold. Thus it has come to pass, and the bike is written off.
It has come to pass. That
what were your other presents? What else did you want to?
Well, I had a lot of presents that I was very easily influenced as a kid by advertising, and they did some great toy ads back in the late 70s, early 80s, and one of them was the American stuntman Evel Knievel. And he who used to famously jumped over the Grand Canyon on his rocket bike. But this was a slightly more modest version. It was his stunt cycle. And he was a tiny figurine, which you put on the stunt cycle. And you couldn't really bend them into the shape. So you were really just plonking a very erect man onto a stunt cycle. And you couldn't bend his knees or arms. And then you had to wind up the stunt cycle and let him go. And when you saw the ad, they did the perspectives from right down on the ground. So it looked amazing. It looked epic. But then when you got him, you were towering above him. So he was kind of a spindly little plastic guy with a clockwork wind-up thing. And people are very fond of it. But
I never had that toy. I never had that toy, but I knew a friend that did. And it was disappointing, just as you say. And I kind of was, when I heard he'd got it, I was a bit jealous. And then when I went over to his house, weeks later and saw it, and it just kind of failed to go 10 feet across a room, I was very glad that I hadn't got it. And
there was no backing music. There was no fireworks. No one cheering.
I never really in the 70s. I was never really into kind of motor cars so I never was really into sort of the stuntman thing of him. But I was really puzzled by a little bit of the acclaim. I don't want to diss Evel Knievel, because obviously he's good. But isn't the point of being a stuntman that you can do stuff and not get injured? But Evel, like every other jump he did, went horrendously wrong, and he broke his legs and his pelvis and his arms, and he had like 18 months in hospital getting over it. And then he would do some other daft jump and get away with it, but then the next one would go just completely wrong. And I kind of didn't admire him as much as I might have done, just because it seemed to constantly go wrong, rather than like he did these daring things and actually got away with it.
Never got hurt. Yeah,
I never got hurt. No,
he was always being carried off at the end of the show, and he would manage to lift up one thumb.
There's a. Would you like to hear about just one of the accidents? I've got a short paragraph here on one of his.
I would love to.
It's
a light accident.
All right, this is taken on May the 10th, 1971. Knievel crashed while attempting to jump 13 Pepsi delivery trucks. His approach was complicated by the fact that he had to start on pavement, cut across grass, and then return to pavement. So every care was taken. His lack of speed caused the motorbike to come down front wheel first. He managed to hold on until the cycle hit the base of the ramp. After being thrown off, he skidded for 50 feet, broke his collarbone, suffered a compound fracture of his right arm, and broke both legs. Ouch.
That is,
so
yeah, that's not
he
funny.
suffered for his art. He suffered for his art.
That was a brave guy. And I think his son then took up the mantle when the dad stopped doing it. So it was a generational thing. What do you want to do? I want to follow my dad's footsteps and fall off my bike for 50 feet. So, but anyway, the point is that was a toy that everyone was getting and I thought I had to have. And then when I got it, you went, you know what? This is not a great toy. But then a few years later, I was getting into sci-fi and fantasy, and that was really my thing. And then my uncle was always a big deal going over to my uncle's house, and he gave me a book called Birds of the World, and I was like, "What? Like a nature book for a sci-fi guy?" I just couldn't, and I was so upset because I felt quite close to that uncle. We all have that cool uncle that we really like, and for him to give me that felt like, oh, we're not close anymore because he's so fallen out of touch with me that he's given me a book about birds, and he must have sensed that I didn't really like the present, because he came over to me after and he said, you know, I think you're really good at drawing and I thought you'd like to draw these birds, and it showed me that he was thinking about me and not just picking up a random book for a shelf. And as it turned out, then I spent years copying the birds out of that book. So that's one of those presents where I thought it was rubbish, but it turned out to be possibly the best present I could have gotten at that time. So
no, that's nice. I think there is a difference in perspective between adults and kids. Adults will often, I think, and I'm guilty of this, buy a present for a kid that represents something that they'd like the kid to be interested in or think the kid should be interested in. And the kid wants presents. Obviously, when I was a kid, I wanted presents about stuff I was already interested in, stuff I might get interested in. So like you, I was going, well, I'm not interested in that now. Whereas the adult would kind of think, oh, you know, this is great. I'd really like to talk to you about it. And this could be of use to you. And it's an interest you could have. Whereas as a kid, you have a very narrow blink of like, these are the things I am interested in. And you know, could I have presents those, please?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and I'm guilty of it too. I want my kids to go in a certain way. I remember really trying to get my younger boy interested in Lego, because I had so many fantastic years. With Lego.
I love Lego. Yeah.
And I thought he's missing out. He's not doing Lego, so we just kept buying him Lego, and he just kept ignoring it or throwing it in corners. And there were whole sets of Legos that were never opened. Because it wasn't his thing, but for the second child, I think we'd gotten that out of our systems. So I said, I'm just going to try maybe 12 sets of Lego, and if he doesn't take it up, then I'm going to leave it. So I have no Lego people. Have you got? Is Fisher interested in
a
Lego?
Little bit, not as much as I would like. So Lexi, not at all. Lexi, 13, nearly 14, not at all interested in Lego. Fisher, yes, does some Lego. He needs a little bit of persuading. You have to prise the computer screen or the phone screen out of his cold, clammy hands. And then when you get him with some Lego, then he'll do it. He's got a big Baby Yoda thing that we're going to build over Christmas. Not Christmas present, it was from his birthday, that we're going to build. So he needs a little bit of encouragement, but then he actually gets a real sense of reward and whatnot when he's done it.
Yeah. Seamus, you should know that every present you get from us for the next 10 years for your little baby is going to be Lego. And it may look a bit battered because it might be one of the ones they gave to Finn and he'd never even opened the box.
Your Evel Knievel motorcycle made in Lego.
Oh, wow. Well, then it would break apart effectively. You know, it would look good when it landed. It would be realistic. But you know what would, I think, probably cheer me up after talking about all these things, rubbish presents, is if we finally got a recommendation from an author that featured us.
Well, the next recommendation is from M.G. Leonard. She was on the program last podcast telling us about her encounter on a hydrogen train with the Prime Minister, which really is when things started to go very wrong for Boris. So I think maybe M.G. People will look back and see that as the beginning of the downfall. So I happen to know that M.G. is a big graphic novel fan. She absolutely loves us, so it would stun me sideways if she didn't recommend Illegal. So, Seamus, you have been down to her lovely abode near Brighton. Once more, gatecrashed a family dinner and got a book recommendation. Please play it.
Hello, my name is MG Leonard, and my book recommendation is The Murderer's Ape by Jakob Wegelius. And this book is an astonishing story about an ape called Sally Jones. And she's an engineer on a ship. She is the narrator of the story. And one of the things that I think makes this book particularly special is obviously she's an ape. She cannot communicate or talk, but she understands the humans all around her. And she's the one who's telling this story. And the fact that she can't actually speak makes the narrative really poignant and special. But this story has got the drama of a murder. Her friend, the chief on the ship, has been arrested as the suspected murderer. And Sally, who is an ape, sets out to solve that murder and save her best friend. The journey takes you across the globe to interesting places. It's really gripping. It's uniquely told. And it's full of really beautiful drawings by Jakob, fine pen point drawings and characters that are just captivating. It's one of those stories, a bit like a Studio Ghibli movie, that sometimes moves at a slow pace, but you don't want it to speed up. Every detail is beautifully thought out and put together. And it's one of those books that feels like a classic, yet new and exciting at the same time.
The murders, it's all... It seems like it's all gone wrong for us today, Andrew. You know, you're trying to be optimistic going into Christmas. Finally, the political world has calmed down, except in the UK. And now we get this, the murders.
It's doubly hurtful because firstly, it's not one of our books. And secondly, The Murderer's Ape, I thought I'd bagged that for my autobiography title. So I'm doubly perplexed. I'll be honest with you, doubly perplexed. You look very pained. So shall we move on to Agony Eoin?
Thank you for your question. Agony Eoin will be with you shortly.
Today's we got one question this podcast. Please send in questions for season 2 to doublebookpodcast@aol.com. Anything that you want to know about writing, techniques of writing, publishing, being published, the publishing industry, etc. This question is from Doreen Stevens, who sent it in by email from Hornchurch in Essex. And she says, in a previous podcast, you said you try and write nearly every day. Eoin, do you take time off over Christmas? And if you do, how long?
Well, Doreen, I don't really take time off at all. And the reason for that is I don't consider writing to be, you know, time on, if you like. For me, it's like I'm lucky enough to do my hobby as a profession. And even though it is hard work, I try and get a little bit done every day. So if I'm forced to take time off over Christmas, I will. So sometimes you have to close the computer for a few hours and you know, talk to the family. And I like doing that. I love doing that. But as soon as I can, as soon as I feel I've done my bit for humanity, I will sneak off and do a bit of work. And sometimes it's hard to do that, obviously, because if I come out to my office here and turn on the light, I'm quite obviously writing, and that could be frowned upon on Christmas Day. So what I'd like to do is I take my little laptop and I say, oh, just had a lot of turkey there. I think I'll go to the bathroom. And I think sometimes I give it away a bit by declaring I'm going to the bathroom, because only children do that usually. And I sneak off and I will do 15 minutes. And even that 15 minutes, if you get like a paragraph written or a few good sentences, it can just change my mood for the day. And you probably agree with that, Andy. Totally. It can turn a day around. If you're having a bit of a bummer day and then you just are determined to get that, even a sentence, a good sentence, an interesting sentence, that can really take me out of a mood if I'm in a mood. Say, for example, we played 4 podcast guests and none of them, or 5 even, and none of them recommended our books. I would probably then just go in and try and write a good paragraph in which 5 random authors were murdered. And then that would make me feel a lot better about everything. So my answer to you, Doreen, is I don't really take time off. Now, I'm not kind of working myself to the bone. I do enjoy life and as it goes on around me, but there would never be a day, I think, where I don't at least write a paragraph of something or a sentence or two. But that's just me. What about you, Andrew?
I used to particularly like the time between kind of the 2 weeks of Christmas, because all editors used to take those 2 weeks off, so you could kind of have a little bit of a catch up, and you could do the odd day and you could do the odd hour in the evenings and stuff and catch up. And then last year, because of COVID and everyone was working from home anyway, it didn't make any difference, and the editors didn't really take any time off because everybody would just got to a kind of freelance lifestyle where they were doing hours, odd hours whenever they could, and so there wasn't that kind of giant shutdown. Everything just kind of carried on, and I think that's one of the weird long-term things about kind of changes to society with COVID, is that people previously that you and I worked for, editors in offices with quite strict 9 to 5 and this, that, and the other, grazing kind of work schedule.
Yeah. I agree, and nobody's taken any time off. And if you're at home and you have something to do and the opportunity arises, most people will do it, rather than if you're on your Christmas holidays away from work and nobody is working, you tend to find something else to do that's not work related. But me and you and Seamus, I suspect, also are doing what has to be done, and it doesn't matter when that happens. Although when little Seamus arrives, there'll be no more work at odd hours, because there will be no free time. all time is booked, and which will be nice for you, and we wish you luck with it, Seamus, but we will at no point offer any assistance.
Just wise words, love, and good feelings, which I think is, that's very...
Yeah, wise words. Yeah, wise words, love and good feelings, and maybe the occasional postcard from a summer sunny when we're having, margaritas by a beach. We'll send you a postcard.
Excellent. Seamus, Did you popped into the studio next door and recorded a book recommendation with PJ, didn't you, before he left us?
Yeah, we managed to get a little recording from PJ. Now, I haven't got a chance to listen back to the recording, but I'm sure everything was perfect. We recorded it. He was very happy about his recommendation. He knew you guys would be very happy with it. So let's see if we can pull up the tape.
Great.
Run PJ. Let's go.
Hi, my name's PJ Lynch, and my recommendation is The Magician's Elephant by Kate DiCamillo. Kate DiCamillo is one of my favorite authors, and she is really wonderful on characterization and also on dialogue. Dialogue is probably her biggest strength. And this book is wonderful. It's more magical than most of her books, to be honest. But the magic is really based in reality, and that's what sort of makes it ring true for me. It also happens to be illustrated by Yoko Tanaka, and Yoko has done fantastic illustrations that match Kate DiCamillo's text really beautifully. So I think anyone who likes a little bit of historic fiction will love getting into this book. It's absolutely magical and wonderful characters, and enjoy it. Get that one for Christmas. But there are two authors who even pip Kate DiCamillo for me for my favorites. That would be Andrew Donkin and Eoin Colfer. They're just absolutely wonderful authors, and they've worked together on many different projects. And my favorite book of theirs is...
He's gone. That's it.
That's the end of the year.
He was gonna say...
I felt he was going to say. I mean, I'm not sure if you were involved, Andrew. I felt it was probably me, but at least one of us. But we've seen
at this juncture, I'd settle even for that.
We seem to be none for six there. I don't know what the cricket term for that is. Bowled, they're bowled out and bowled over, and a couple of silver leaders.
So that's the end of the first series of Double Booked.
Yes.
Because we've done 6 episodes. We didn't have a guest in the first one. It was just you and I rabbiting on.
Yeah.
I've loved seeing you every month, doing a Double Booked with you, talking about children's books, talking about the industry, talking about writing. We've had some fantastic guests. Thank you especially to Jonathan Stroud, Jenny Valentine, Kurashikawa, MJ, and PJ Lynch today, and our fantastic co-producer and studio engineer, Seamus Redmond. And mostly thanks to you, my friend.
Oh, thanks to you. It's been good, and it's been kind of educational for us too. I've liked hearing the questions that come in to see what people really want to know about, because sometimes you take for granted that people know stuff about this industry that maybe they don't. So I hope we've managed to spread some kind of I wouldn't say laser focused knowledge, meandering knowledge.
Meandering
maybe
knowledge.
if you
I think
do it
that's
10 times, you'll find something.
That's still knowledge. And if people have suggestions and questions for the next series, which starts in January, then please let us have them on doublebookpodcast@aol.com. And everybody have a very, very Merry Christmas. Stay safe. Have as good a Christmas as you can, and Happy New Year.
And all that remains for me to say is, my pal Andrew, can you please read the credits?
I will. Double Booked was produced by Owen Colfer and Andrew Donkin and Seamus Redmond. Sound editing by Seamus Redmond. Theme music by Liam Bates. This has been a Silver Foxes Productions. We hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Other festive holidays are available.